For Joe Azalina, I am Derek Gano. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. And today we have another guest, uh, hopefully a college basketball expert is what we're going for here. Joe's cousin, Nick Degerolamo. Welcome, Nick. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's appreciative to be on your show. I've seen quite a few episodes now on Facebook and even seen a few on YouTube. Definitely enjoy coming and watching those in the afternoon after school. Uh, Little brief myself. I'm Joseph's cousin, much younger cousin. 24, recent college graduate. Went to St. John's University in the great Queens, New York City. I was a sport management major, so I like to think I know quite a bit about a lot of sports, ranging from football and golf to cricket and bowling, to say the least. But currently, I'm a substitute teacher at the local middle school in my town at Phillipsburg Middle School. Currently exploring options of possibly getting into teaching too, going into the teaching route, kind of pivoting from sports since COVID-19 pandemic kind of put a hold on lot of sports and a lot of people being able to go to arenas and events. So
Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming on. And Joe, what's on tap?
Well, yes, cousin Nick, it's a pleasure to have you today. And yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the college basketball landscape. We did our show earlier on in the week about March Madness, but we're going to talk a lot more about the inner workings of college basketball, different things, different rules, a couple very interesting topics, and then also we're going to get Nick's opinions about the tournament. We're definitely going to talk about it. It starts tomorrow night if you want to watch a playing game, and then Friday afternoon about 12, they're going to tip it up in Indiana. So this is the best time of year between that and spring training. Doesn't get much better than this, in my opinion. So, Derek, I'm going to kick it back to you for our first topic.
Well, so let's get it started, Nick, with as Joe mentioned, the tournament starts up tomorrow, being Thursday. The NCAA tournament will be played in various venues in Indiana. The first time the tournament has been hosted in its entirety in one state. What are your thoughts on the bubble that the NCAA decided on creating and where they decided to ultimately have it?
well, for starters, I'm a little it's a little amusing to say the least that they opted for a bubble because for the longest time leading up to when they actually started the season around Thanksgiving of last year into November and even in December and even January really of 2020, they always said we're not doing a bubble, we're not doing a bubble, we're not doing a bubble. Because when you think about it, there's a lot of money to be made by hosting in various different cities and different venues. Especially if you can get a hometown team makes the tournament and they manage to get a high seed so they play close. They get two games in essentially close to their city. Just as an example, you know, um, when Duke was a one seed back in the early 90s, quite often, a lot of times you would find their first round game and their second round game were close to Charlotte, North Carolina, or they were close to Greensboro, North Carolina. And the reason for that is you want a lot of their fans to be able to come see the games, but then also you book other places. So you're looking at Ohio, you're looking at Florida, you're looking at Texas, you're looking at Boston playing games at the Garden or the TD Garden, I should say, not the Garden. You got Washington, you got all these other cities, and then eventually in late January they said, "Well, we're going to do it in a highly controlled environment," which is basically a bubble, but they refuse to call it an actual bubble because you know the players and whatnot they don't really have any free will to move around there, so it is technically a bubble. But I don't think they're testing them on the day of the games, like they're scheduled. They're testing them in the days they're not playing, but they're not testing them the day they play the game because God forbid, the fifth bench player on uh, Missouri test positive. Well,
Yeah.
now what are you going to do? The reason I say that is because actually a player from Oklahoma tested positive a few hours ago, and he's their second leading scorer. So keep that in mind when filling out your brackets potentially. He's out for the first 2 games. The fact that it's in Indiana, that's not a shocker to me, to be honest. Because where's the NCAA headquarters? Indianapolis, in Indiana. So this basically gives a way for Mark Emmert and the other NCAA personnel that want to be able to attend the games and be able to go to the games and hand out the Final Four trophies and whatnot. Kind of gives them a way that they can go and attend the games then without having to quarantine or do any of these other restrictions that are in place in other states. Obviously, you have some states where there's no restrictions now, but there were restrictions back when they had to decide this 2 months ago. So I'm not at all surprised that they opted to do it in Indiana. Nothing against Indiana. I mean, they certainly can do it. There are 7 different venues, I believe, that are doing the first round. So it's definitely a state that's capable of doing it from a basketball perspective. But I'm not surprised they didn't in Indiana. I am a little surprised that they did opt to go to a quote unquote bubble format after saying for so long that they weren't going to.
Yeah, it's really interesting too that when I thought of Indiana, you got the Pacers, you have the Hoosiers, and then you think about it in the '90s when I was really young, I would witness the Final Four in Indiana. It was in where, so it isn't a shocker. I think that's the best way to put it. It's not surprising. What I think surprising is they're using some awesome, awesome venues, but they're also using a couple ones that are questionable too, in a way. And one's a high school gym that Larry Bird played in. So there's something to be said about that too. And I think it will be the intrigue, and hopefully we do see some fans. And it's very, very, very hard to hear that about the Oklahoma player. I hope he gets better fast. That he could play in the second round if they win, or even third round. But I think we want to move on to our second topic though, and that's going to be, what did you feel, Nick, was the overall atmosphere of the games during a pandemic, and would you say it had a different feel, maybe in comparison to the National Football League season?
So I'll answer that second part first. Actually, it definitely has a different feel than the NFL season had, and I think all sports had a pretty different feel to it than the football season did. Reason being is that, when you look at the football games, specifically the NFL, most of the times when you're watching the game, the camera is pointed down on the field, so you don't really see the fans from the camera angles that you would wish to view. Okay, now you think of other sports, and you can relate to this obviously with baseball. You're looking from the pitcher's backside. Instead of seeing a lot of fans there, you saw a lot of cardboard cutouts this past year. And it kind of, although you didn't really see too many cardboard cutouts from some of the televised arenas, like at Kentucky, I think Auburn was another one. If you watched the Big Ten championship at all this past week, you know what I'm talking about. The best way I can describe it is it felt like an AAU setting, kind of, where you go to an AAU basketball game. There's quite a few talented kids and whatnot. It's like one of those summer league ones. So you only get really the parents that come out. There's like 50 people in the gym, and you don't, you hear some noise, but you don't hear a lot. Now, there were some teams and stadiums based on their state's restrictions and how they were dealing with the pandemic. They were able to have, decent crowds in of, couple 10,000, maybe even 15, 20,000 if you're at a place like Syracuse, if it was allowed. But in these other ones, you see, like in the backdrop is almost like a curtain, kind of, where you see all these players are all spaced out, so when, a big dunk happens or someone hits a big three, you don't see everyone holding them back on the bench, kind of. It's more of like standing up and giving like a
golf clap.
like you just went to a play and clapping. So it definitely had a different feel to it. I think that definitely drove some people away from watching it. The sports show that I watch a lot now, Pardon the Interruption, big fan of it. Watch it a long time.
Yep.
And Tony Kornheiser, one of the hosts, says he barely paid attention any of the season because it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like real college basketball. You didn't have Cameron Crazies. You didn't have Rupp Arena. You didn't have the Tobacco Road with the people getting really jacked up and fired up. Sorry
Sure.
about that, Joe, by the way.
It's
But
okay.
you know, you don't. It definitely had a different feel to it, so to speak. So if you weren't an avid fan of college basketball, and you don't have like a team that you really root for a lot, or you're not like the biggest fan of it, it definitely had a different feel to it. Uh, Maybe, and it probably impacted it more than football did for the NFL, in my opinion, anyways.
And so for those that don't know, so I have a couple of numbers here. So Butler's Hinkle Field House has a capacity of 9,100, 25%. It's going to be 25% capacity. It's going to allow about 2,200 fans. Indiana's Assembly Hall holds over 17,000. That'll be about 4,300. Mackey Arena, 14,000. That'll be about 3,700. The largest is what Lucas Oil Stadium
Yeah.
seats 70,000. So whatever that number comes out to
Yeah.
be, but
Better than nothing.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's the
and
thing.
more than what's definitely been throughout the entire season. So,
Right.
and you even think about like some kids have been building towards this their entire lives, and they almost would fuels them during March Madness type season, and not
Momentum's
having
huge.
fans would be really. It's one
Yeah.
thing during the regular season, but during March Madness, which is known to be one of the best events ever during the sports year, to not have them would have been very tough. But so now we dive into something that may hurt Joe's feelings a little bit.
little bit.
What are your
A little
thoughts
bit.
on the uncharacteristic seasons by trademark powers like Duke and Kentucky? Obviously, Michigan State is still in the tournament, but definitely a lower seed. In fact, one of the play-in games. Can we now say that a roster of mostly one and done players? You saw a lot of it for Kentucky. They're probably the biggest culprit. Duke has probably gathered that as well.
Close second.
Mostly one and done players is not going to give you a championship automatically anymore. What do we feel about that?
Well, for starters, I mean, I don't think a one and done ever necessarily did guarantee you a championship. I mean, there's a lot of teams that, they had a one and obviously we refer to Duke and Kentucky. They're the two programs that over the last decade have really, been at the forefront of the one and done players. I mean, the list goes on and on. Zion Williamson, DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, John Wall. The list goes on and on of players that went one and then left. Um, I don't think one necessarily guarantees you it, because you could have a player as good as Zion was in college. Doesn't mean you necessarily win it. Or an Anthony Davis. Even an Anthony Davis did win it, I believe, but the team didn't necessarily go undefeated. So, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily done. I think this year was just impacted largely by the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, because a lot of players said, "Listen, I'm just going to opt out. There's no point. It's not fans aren't going to be there. It's not really what I signed up for. Why would I go and risk something in college, not knowing what the NBA is going to be doing, and go to that?" I mean, also what you got to consider and remember is because a lot of these conferences only ended up doing conference only games, or mostly conference only games. Like I think Duke only played 4 games out of conference, and they were what, 13 and 11. So I mean, if you normally otherwise would give them probably what, another 8 games out of conference,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that these other teams aren't good, but 6 or 7 of those are probably cupcake games where they're paying the team like 200 grand to just come and lose,
Get their butt kicked.
and just gives them exposure. I mean, but seriously, so if you think about it though, Duke went 13 and 11. So even if they had to pull out of the tournament when they did, say they get those 7 wins, cupcake wins, and the other one was, they played Iowa and they lose to Iowa in like a December game, they're 20 and 12, and they're probably in the tournament.
Yeah.
In a normal year. It's not like they would necessarily be out. I think even with their team and Jalen Johnson leaving the team in this late December, or late January, early February. I think Duke still would have gotten in if they were able to have those cupcake opponents. They probably wouldn't
Mhm.
have been, a top 5 seed. They probably would have been, like a 7 seed or, a 9 seed. Would really
Yeah.
stunk for a 1 seed or a 2 seed. But I think they still would have had a shot at it. Now Kentucky had a losing record, so
Yeah.
Calipari admitted that that was on him this year. So I think you need a few more years to kind of like assess that to see like what
Mhm.
happens with them and their recruiting. I haven't paid attention to college basketball recruiting really,
Yeah.
but I would say if you see Kentucky not being able to get in the tournament as much and they have a couple more losing seasons or 500 seasons, or if Duke has, these uncharacteristic years again and they struggled to get past the first round or two, then I would say, and most of those kids are one and dones, then I would say you probably have issues. But you'll see kids come up in both programs that are there for 2, 3, 4 years and, probably be able to help them and lead them a bit. I mean, John Morant stayed for 2 years,
Right.
he wasn't a one and done. And the second year, he was able to lead Murray State to an upset win into the round.
Mhm.
So
I
I don't
also,
think
And
it's done yet.
yeah. Go ahead,
and
Derek.
Nick, what's your individual opinion on the one and done rule? Would you like it to stay where it is? Would you like them maybe to have to stay 2 years? Would you want them to just go right from high school? What would you like to see them move forward?
In my own personal opinion, I would follow the model that baseball makes players follow more often. I
Mm.
think that's more appropriate. The NFL and maybe the NHL are probably the only two major team sports where I feel well, not even the NHL, I'm sorry, the NFL, where you need to go to college first before you can do it, because I don't think you can send a 17-year-old kid out there getting blown up by
Right.
men
Yeah.
on a daily basis. But if it were up to me, I would remember, though, this is an NBA rule. The NBA says you have to be out of high school for 1 year before you can be eligible to enter the NBA draft, and I believe you have to be 19 years of age. I think you have to be 19. It could be 18, depending on when your birthday is, but I think it's 19. So, in my own personal opinion, if you're an 18-year-old kid and you're ranked, at the top of the charts for all these recruiting classes, and you have an opportunity to go to the pros, I don't see why the NBA shouldn't allow you to go to the pros.
Mm.
But I think if you opt to stay into college, in my own personal opinion, you should go for at least 2 years. Because I think being able to go for 1 year or saying you have to go for 1 year, are you really even paying attention to your classes or anything? Is it really even worth it? Because I
Right.
mean,
No.
if you don't pay attention to your classes in the first year, then and you flunk and now you're out, well, now you're like, all right, now I'm out of school. I'm basically dropping out of school. I'm college dropout. That won't look good when I have to, maybe go back to school or something. And now I'm looking at, okay, I gotta maybe go overseas and play games over there. Sure, you get paid, but obviously Lamelo Ball went overseas. He dropped out of high school. He went overseas and played, but you know he's one of a kind. The guys
Yeah.
that are lower ranked in their recruiting classes, is that really something you want to do? Because college is a backup for a lot of people, you know, in the long term, because you can't play sports forever and you can't work in sports forever. So,
Right.
and the future you don't know. So, in my own opinion, if you want to go straight from high school to the pros, you should be allowed to. The NBA should lift that rule, and they're looking into it. I think next year might potentially be the first year that you could go straight to the pros. But if you elect to go to college, I would say you have to go to college for 2 years at minimum. I think the one and done is hurting college more than it's hurting the NBA, because the NBA will still be there for players like a Zion, a LaMelo Ball, a Ja Morant. But you get those players that go to college and they're there for 1 year. Cool. You saw them for 4 months, 5 months maybe, and now they're gone like the wind. Ben
Yeah.
Simmons was in college too, if you remember that. Went to
Yeah.
LSU.
Yeah.
Team didn't make the NCAA tournament. It got an invite to the NIT. He said, nah, I'm not about that, and dropped out and left. Actually, he might have even left before the NIT, unless I'm mistaken. And I think his GPA was like a 1.2 at the time he left. And
Terrible.
I don't even know how you get a 1.2 in college. I mean, I don't. So, I mean, that's my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people say you shouldn't have to go to college, and a lot of people these days say, you know, college isn't the most essential thing. But I'm glad I went to college, and a lot of athletes enjoy college. So, I think if you want to go straight to high school or go to pros, you should be allowed to. But if you opt to go to college, you should follow the baseball route and stay for 2, maybe 3 years, because it helps build your name too.
Yep.
Joe, just a quick tidbit. You are absolutely correct, Nick. 19 years old to be eligible, as well as 1 year removed from high school graduation. That's stipulations in order to go into
Two quick things that he touched on that I just can't not say. Number one, Zion Williamson was probably the best player that Duke has seen in a very long time, and he did not win a national title. I said if he came back for a second year, not saying he would do it, but he had another chance. He never took it. That's one thing. Number two, I grew up with watching players like Mateen Cleaves, Morris Peterson. That's the Michigan State team I'm alluding to. They stayed for 4 years. That's what I enjoyed watching those guys. And Tim Duncan was another one. He didn't have to, and look, he made all the money in the world. So these guys, I agree, Nick, totally. And I'm not just saying this. I totally agree. They need to come to college and they need to stay for at least 2 years. And in some cases, I think it'll benefit them to stay for the third, but it only helps the program they're in to stay that long anyway. So, off my soapbox, I will go on to the next topic, and that is, did you think the NBA's new G League format hurt college basketball? And do you feel as though paying college athletes is inevitable, which is a huge issue as we go on in 2021?
Well, I'll touch on the first one first, about the G League. I think the G League hurt it in the immediate term, because obviously you had some high level prospects that are going to be in the top 10 draft this year that I've never heard of, because I don't watch the G League personally, but they're going to be eligible, and they obviously pulled out of their colleges. A couple of them could have been Kentucky, a couple could have been Duke, or other schools I don't necessarily know for certain. But I think it did hurt them immediately, like for this year, obviously on top of the pandemic and other factors. It may hurt them in the next season too, because those would have been sophomores that pulled out or juniors that pulled out. So I think what we have to assess on the G League's rule is going to be whether or not the NBA next year or in 2023 allows players to come straight out of high school. So you're going to have to give it like another year or two. If we start to find that, these teams are not, these powerhouses or traditional powers are not getting as good of players in college, or, we do get a great player in college like a Luka Garza, but he's not even a projected lottery pick, like a top 14 pick in the draft this upcoming year. So it's like, all right, what are we doing? Do we have to inevitably pay players? Now, I could go on for 6 episodes about paying players. I've been a big advocate for why they should be getting paid and everything of that nature. Not just college basketball and college football players, because you can't just pay them. You have to pay everyone.
Right.
Because everyone is being used essentially as an employee, if you think about it. I mean, especially during the pandemic, a lot of schools don't have a lot of kids coming on campus. A lot of them, they had to reduce tuition. And where are they still going to be getting some money from? Their
Athletics.
football TV ratings and their basketball ratings. Just a small tidbit, I believe Rutgers gets like $40 to $50 million a year just for being in the Big Ten conference. Wow. And they stink. I know they made the NCAA tournaments this year, and I know they got a few good wrestlers, and there may be some other, smaller athletics that, are good, but their two main ones, for the most part, basketball and football, are a joke. They shouldn't be in the Big Ten at all. And you say, well, how do you pay everyone? How do you pay, all the football players? How do you pay the basketball players? How do you pay the, women's volleyball and women's soccer players? And, to be honest with you, obviously, if you have a big name quarterback at Ohio State, you would think, okay, maybe he is supposed to be getting paid a little bit more than, the women's volleyball player because, he's helping bring in more revenue. So I don't know how you distinguish, that kind of pay scale and whatnot, obviously, because of Title IX and a lot of other factors, you have to consider. But don't tell me there's not enough money. Okay. Because there's 4 Power 5. I read this from Jay Billis. Jay Billis, he's a college basketball analyst for ESPN. He's also a lawyer. He's one of the smartest people I've ever listened to and that I know. He is a Duke alum, although he took North Carolina.
He did.
But he posted on what I think it was his Twitter or his Instagram earlier today. Go check it out. A couple of tweets. But like Utah men's basketball, they just fired their head basketball coach. And in a lot of college athletics now, they have what's called a buyout clause. So if you want to get rid of someone before their contract is actually up and you fired them, you're essentially buying them out, saying, I'm going to pay you over this prolonged period of time. Yeah. I'm going to give you this much up front, and I'm going to pay you the rest over another 4 years for you to basically be gone. That buyout is $6.625 million. So he's going to be getting paid for probably the next 5 years from Utah, and he's not going to be coaching somewhere else. Or he is going to be coaching somewhere else. So he's going to be making that salary and probably be getting $1 million from Utah, even though he doesn't coach Utah anymore.
Probably been there.
That $1 million, you can't tell me, wouldn't fund probably almost every be able to give them like what, 25, 30 grand to almost all of the athletics teams at Utah University, except for, maybe football, because football has 85 scholarships. So maybe you wouldn't be able to get to that. But I mean, there's definitely the money. And look at some of the people that get insane bonuses or so different pay rate scales and raises. I mean, Nick Saban makes, I think, close to $9 million before bonuses. I guarantee, and Nate Oates, their basketball coach, makes, I think, like $2 or $3 million. Now, Saban's definitely worth the $9 million.
Yeah.
But if you looked up the ones for the other Alabama coaches, I guarantee you they're making under $1 million. So even if you reduce Nick Saban down to 5, and there was some sort of cap on it, there's $4 million that you could just put towards it. Right. Clemson pays 2 football coaches over $3 million. Their defensive coordinator gets over $3 million.
Venables
paid coordinator in football by like $2 million. So there's definitely the money to go around to pay these athletes if that needed to be done. It's just a matter of, does the NCAA ever allow it? Now, a lot of state legislators are starting to take up legislation to pay athletes. I know New Jersey is introducing it. I know California passed a bill for it. Florida is looking at passing a bill for it. So I think in the next couple of years, you're going to start to see that athletes are inevitably going to get paid. Even if it's not a salary, they're still going to be allowed to,
stipends or
have
something.
their own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Or,
video games.
Get a sponsor or something like that. I mean, because the best way to put it, best example I'm going to give, and I'll end on this. If you go to college on a band scholarship, okay, you go to a band scholarship, full ride, you're on the band team, you're playing the trumpet or you're playing the flute or the drums, whatever, and you make an album while you're in college, you're allowed to sell that album and you can make tons of money. You can make all the money to pay for your college. But as a football player, you not only can you not make an album, you can't do a show like we're doing now, or you can't do a podcast where someone pays you $500 to read an ad about your local pizzeria, because that's not. And I don't know how you don't allow that.
Yeah, there's so many rules that are not even. It's so bad. And we, again, Nick, you're right. We could have you for another show to talk about that, but that was great points though. And Derek, I think I'm gonna kick it back to you for our fifth topic, right?
Yes, Joe, we're going to go on to the next question here. And so, Nick, we kind of talked about quite a few potential changes in the NCAA and as well as the NBA. But is there anything in the current NCAA basketball landscape that you would like to definitely see changed over, say, the next 5 years?
There's not too much. I mean, we kind of touched on a lot of subjects
Yeah.
previously about, paying athletes, if obviously how long they stay or not stay kind of depends on what the NBA decides to do with their own um things of that nature. Those are really the two biggest ones. The only other one I would be like a personal knick-knack with kind of is the invitationals. I mean, I like going to like Madison Square Garden on occasions for like the Jimmy V Classic, or they hold the Champions Classic that usually has like these powerhouses and blue bloods. Like I like those, but I feel like there's just a few too many like odd and end ones, like smaller end ones. Like there's always like one in Maui every year, and I'm like, why are we doing one in Maui?
Hmm.
They have a few other ones that are like ancillary, or like I remember the one at St. John's was called like the Gabbett tip-off games, but it was in like mid-December, so the season was already like a month in. So it's like, why are you calling it tip-off games when we're a month into the season? So I mean, just eliminating some of those smaller ones. I'd rather see, these schools play, at their home games against like a non-conference opponent, you know, and you build it up good on ESPN and it goes on to ESPN. I would say Fox and CBS, but obviously with football during November and December, it's kind of hard to beat out that. So I mean, that's really the only thing. Like I said, though, I like the Champions Classic. I like the Jimmy V Classic during Jimmy V week. There's a couple of big ones that I like still to watch, so I'm fine with those. But it's all the other small ones I just rather like Knicks. Like I'm really tired of seeing UNC go to Maui. To be honest, I'm tired of seeing that. But
Um, I thought maybe you were going this direction, but I'll throw it to you off the cuff here. Obviously, everyone knows about the March Madness tournament, but there's also the NIT tournament that for those that aren't good enough to get in, for those that aren't good enough to get in the NIT tournament, there's the CBI tournament, there's the CIT tournament. Is there a different thing you would like to see college basketball do besides those little go ahead, go play a couple more games tournaments, or
well, the NIT I actually has a long history and a long tradition. For the longest time, it wasn't really until what was it? I want to say it wasn't probably until UCLA's run in the late '60s and early '70s with John Wooden that the NCAA tournament became like the thing to win, because it was always, all right, you're going to play the NIT and then you play the NCAA tournament. But the NIT was like the big mecca thing because they played like the championship games at the Garden, as people like to call it all the time. So I mean, yeah, I mean, that was like the big thing. So like the NIT I like, and I don't mind the whole, let's give teams that have seniors, a chance for at least one more game, because maybe if their season, ended in a bad way or on a buzzer beater, you want to get that one last game in, kind of, because for them, a lot of those teams that don't make it, they have kids that are never going to play again, really.
Yeah,
so
sure.
most of them. So I don't really mind them so much.
okay. Joe, on to the
So
actual tournament
yeah, we're
questions
getting
here.
now. Here we go. It's starting up on Friday afternoon, like we said, and Nick, I got to go here, and it's going to be a tough question, but just give us a few things here. So after watching plenty of games this season, is there one conference that you would say stood out above the rest? And should you give a strong and also should give a strong performance in the tournament?
Big Ten, plain and simple.
Yeah.
They got 9 teams in the
Right.
tournament. Okay, the Big Ten
Right.
isn't. Big Ten doesn't have actually 10 teams in it. They actually have 14. So
Total.
they changed that name, but that's another conversation. But
Right.
short and simple, Big Ten. I mean, I would
Yeah.
also
Had to bring in
kinda say
Rutgers, right? So
I would also say the Big 12 too, also
Right.
because the Big 12, Baylor was a 1 seed, Kansas is a 3, Texas is a 3, Oklahoma State has the number 1 pick and is a 4 seed.
Beast.
Texas Tech made the tournament; they're a 6 seed, and
Yeah.
they had the number 1 transfer in the country, and Matt McClung from Georgetown.
Yeah.
Get into that later, perhaps. So here, I'm going to steal a line from Tony Kornheiser again. If you're filling out your brackets and you're not really sure, who to take, if it's a Big East, or I'm sorry, if it's a Big 10 team or a Big 12 team and it's the first round, take them. I almost guarantee you, probably almost none of them are going to lose in the first round because they're all high seeds too. Like,
Right.
I'm not taking Illinois to lose early. I'm not taking Michigan to lose despite losing Isaiah Livers. I'm not taking
Right.
Ohio State to lose. I'm not taking Iowa to lose. I'm not taking Baylor or Kansas. I'm not taking any of these teams to lose. I think they're really good. So, I mean, I think the Big Ten was far and away the best conference throughout most of the season. The last month of the season, for the most part, they had 4 teams in the top 10. Michigan was always in the top 5. Illinois was always in the top 5. Iowa made a run late into the top 5 because they were able to knock off Ohio State. And I think they knocked off Michigan. I'm not sure on that one,
Yes.
but they were able to climb their way up. And Ohio State always played all these games tough. I mean,
Yeah.
their first game against Michigan was a pretty good game, a classic. Their Big Ten championship game against Illinois went to overtime. That's why if you tuned in at 6:00 on CBS, you still saw a basketball game going on. You didn't see Greg Gumbel starting to reveal the teams. So, but yeah,
True.
Big Ten and Big 12, far and away, best conferences of the season.
The one thing I will say, and I saw this on the bracket, and here on Timeout, we're doing our own pool for everybody, and I know you have one of your own, so that's awesome. I'm doing one for my work. So I did say though that Illinois Loyola Chicago game could be really interesting because
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
yeah, I just think that, and again, not so much the story of the great nun and the team is an underdog. I just think they pose problems for teams that are supposed to make that run. And Illinois throughout the tournaments are one of those teams that you're afraid to pick them because you just never know what you're going to get with them. So, and watch out for Tom Izzo. He always does stuff he's not supposed to do. So I could imagine seeing him getting a little further along too. But Gar's in Iowa, right? Gar's in Iowa. Me and Derek have talked about him a lot. I even look at Wisconsin. The Badgers play really well, and that North Carolina game could be an interesting 8-9 matchup that we're going to see too. So, but just want to throw a few things out there. Couldn't keep quiet.
You're good.
And so Nick, do we think that now all the big names that are out there, the top seeds that are out there, we talked about no Duke, not even Michigan State, they're a very lower seed, and North Carolina lower seed. Do we think the lack of the power, the big name teams are going to affect anyone's interest or viewership in this tournament? If it's as the top seeds, Gonzaga, a Baylor, or probably even a Gonzaga in Illinois, do we think that that's going to generate the same interest as those big name teams this year?
I still think you do. I mean, obviously you want Duke and Kentucky in because, no offense, Joseph, but people tune in just to watch Duke lose.
Yeah.
That's what people do. They would do the same for Kentucky. I mean, if I was ESPN, I'd book Duke and Kentucky to play next Wednesday night. And it'd probably generate a higher TV rating than any of
That's
the
a very good point.
tournament will, to be honest with you.
That's true.
However, the interest I think is still there. I mean, the last time I checked on ESPN was about 6:15, 6:30. They had over 9.3 million brackets submitted already. And you still have 54 hours at that time until the first games. So it shows you what the interest is. Like, people are submitting brackets. Because also remember, it's been 2 years since we've had a tournament now. So, like, we didn't have it last year. We got robbed of that tournament.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't make it up in May. They didn't make it up over the summer. It got taken from us. So people want to watch this tournament again. It is something that people, are making bracket pools about or offering stuff too. And the other thing that the other two quick points I'll make are, you might read that TV ratings are down, but the point I want to make is that TV ratings are down across a lot of cable networks, and that's kind of been the case for like the last 5 years. They aren't where they were 5 years ago because of streaming services and people tuning into them or tuning in through YouTube TV or Hulu TV, which aren't included in their cable numbers and their TV numbers for ratings. So that has a little bit of an effect on it, so to speak. And it may this year also when you view the ratings, but they're still making money on the entire tournament, even though there may not be fans there. So it may be a little bit less revenue, but they're still making a profit for the money because this funds the NCAA. This tournament funds the NCAA.
Mhm.
Right.
And the other quick point I'll make is we have a team that's undefeated.
Yeah.
Gonzaga's number one overall. Okay. So, and I'm going to give everyone here a little quick history on it. Okay. And I'm stealing from PTI, so I hope I don't get copyright infringement for this. But they're chasing immortality. Okay.
Yeah.
They're chasing immortality. Okay. If you go undefeated in the NFL, cool. College basketball, we see it happen more often than not now. Obviously, it's never going to happen in the NBA, in the NHL, in Major League Baseball. It's not going to happen in those things, okay? Or even in NASCAR. You're never going to see a driver win every race the whole season, okay? In college basketball, though, you're competing somewhere between 30 and 40 games. You go undefeated, that's immortality. So let me give the viewers a quick history lesson on the last couple of teams that haven't been able to do it first. Zion Williamson's Duke Blue Devils. They didn't do it. Okay. Wichita State. They were a 1 seed. Undefeated entering the tournament. Hello, you get 8 seed Kentucky in the second round. They were out. 1991, UNLV, running Rebels.
Yep.
Lost to your Duke Blue Devils and Christian Leitner in the Final Four. Okay. So those are the only 3 teams over the last, 45 years that have entered the tournament undefeated. And all 3 or there's actually 4 in total, but those 3 lost. The 4th one escapes my mind at the moment. But here are the teams that managed to do it previously. 1975, 1976. That's a Bob Knight coach Indiana Hoosiers team. Okay. That's an all-time team. Bob Knight's an all-time coach. Okay. You got 4 teams from John Wooden's UCLA Bruins. Okay. 2 with Bill Walton and 2 with Lou Alcindor. History lesson, kids. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was not his original name. It's Lou Alcindor, the guy that was St. John's second choice, or he was St. John's second choice before UCLA.
Wow.
History fact. Okay.
Know that.
You got 1956, Bill Russell. He played at San Francisco. You ever hear of him before? He's pretty cool. And you got 1957 UNC Tar Heels, who defeated Wilt Chamberlain's Kansas Jayhawks in the final. Okay.
Hasn't been done for
So
a while.
you have a lot of teams. It's been 45 years. So an undefeated team coming into the tournament, and if they keep winning, that interest is going to be there, especially because it's Gonzaga, who has a history of having great teams or entering the tournament with 1, 2, maybe 3 losses and then going out early.
Exactly.
But if they keep winning and they get to the championship,
Woo-hoo.
viewership's going to be there, guaranteed.
And Cinderella. It's always about Cinderella. Whoever's there, like a Florida Gulf Coast. You gotta love Florida Gulf Coast.
Well,
I
that
still
was
talk about them. I still can't believe that happened. But we'll see. This is why the tournament's so great. All right. So now we go to, how do you feel about the teams that missed out and those that barely made it in, aka the bubble teams? And were there any changes you would have made in the selection of the NCAA tournament?
So the only team that I would have liked to see in was Belmont. Belmont went, I believe, 26-4 this season.
Yeah.
Very good record.
Yeah.
They lost in their conference championship game to who I forget who it was off the top of my head because it's a smaller conference. It's the Ohio Valley Conference, so I don't
Yeah.
quite remember it off the top of my head. But I felt they still should have been in the tournament regardless. They weren't even one of the 4 replacement teams that were considered. So I think the committee did bad by that. And you say, well, who would you have put in? I don't know, because I kind of like the whole Michigan State UCLA first
That's
round
interesting.
matchup. I mean, that's going to draw ratings.
Is that a
The
clock,
bubble
though?
teams, I liked them all. I was happy Drake got in. I like seeing Wichita State in, even though it's a 16 seed and they won their conference tournament. Though, I do like. I didn't really have any other issues with a lot of the other bubble teams. I mean, got to remember too, Oregon State and Georgetown weren't supposed to be in it, and they both won their conference tournament games. So that's 2 bids that you steal. So that's how
Right.
Louisville got knocked out. Okay, I think Louisville should have been in too, but remember, Georgetown's 500, and Oregon State. I mean, Oregon State. They took 2 bids away, so that's why Louisville wasn't in. Couple other nitpicks before I get to my big one. I wouldn't have had Texas as a 3. I would have had them as a 4 just because they were a little up and down throughout the season. I know they won their conference tournament, but I don't think they're as good as people are predicting them to maybe get to the Final 4. I don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, I would have had as a 3 seed. Remember, they're the defending champs. And yeah, they are missing like 3 players for this upcoming weekend. And they're not as good, but they do have Sam Hauser, who is a good transfer from Marquette. And they still play pretty good defense against most teams, not named Gonzaga. And I might have had West Virginia as a 3 seed too. They're in the same conference as Big 12. Yeah, they did get bounced early, but I think they're on par with Texas in that regards. The biggest gripe, though, that I had with the tournament, and we mentioned it earlier, Loyola Chicago. They are not an 8 seed. They are not an 8 seed. They are probably a 5 seed, maybe a 6 seed. Okay. They're not an 8 seed. Okay.
They're going to make noise.
I hope they
good
do.
team.
I
That's a
hope they
good
do. I
team.
hope they bust people's brackets. I like Porter Moser as a coach. He's got 3 seniors on that team that went to the Final 4 3 years ago. So they have experience with being in the tournament. I think the NCAA kind of did this, though, more so for TV ratings, because they're hoping Loyola Chicago wins in their first round matchup against Georgia Tech, who, by the way, also stole a bid because they won the ACC tournament.
Really good team.
And they're going to get to play Illinois. So it's like, oh, boy, we get Illinois and Chicago are playing each other. Illinois showdown. Like, I think that's what the NCAA is trying to get here, get a TV ratings booster to help get a couple extra,
the none
$100,000. But Loyola Chicago should not have been 8 seed. I mean, that was the biggest thing I took from the whole bracket things. I flipped out and yelled when that happened.
Well, I got to say, Texas, I will say this quick. The reason I like Texas, I read about this the other night, and me and Derek, who did a show a couple days ago, we talked about it a little bit. I love Shaka Smart, the coach, who used to be at VCU, for people that don't know that. He's a very good coach. If Texas gets out of the weekend, I think they could make noise. I just don't know enough about the team itself. I did read, however, they're being compared to the 2017 national championship team of North Carolina. That was a really impressive team. I guess we're going to see. I mean,
they don't have as many seniors from what I know, as much leadership as they do. They do have a good recruit. I think he's their center. Might be a lottery pick. Shaka Smart, I like as a coach, but I got to be honest with you. If he doesn't make like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 by next tournament, so not this one, by next tournament, he's out there.
Yeah, they got to win some games.
He'll get out. I mean, winning the conference tournament and getting a 3 seed, but even if he gets upset by, who are they playing? Albany and Christian, I believe is who they're playing.
Right.
God,
in the first
they
round.
are.
If they lose to them or they don't get out of the second game, and I think they would be playing the 6th seed at that point, or the 11th seed, which could be BYU or the winner of the Michigan State UCLA game. Don't be surprised if he gets booted. I mean, they booted Tom Herman in football, and Tom Herman was like what? Like 36-18 as the head coach or something.
He was winning.
And they wanted him. The boosters wanted him, and they still booted him. And by the way, that refers back to the thing. They're paying him like $8 million.
There it is.
I mean, so
Unbelievable.
yeah, I mean, Texas is a popular pick. Definitely could see them making an Elite Eight Final Four run. I don't see them compared to the UNC team, in my own personal opinion, but that's why we like the tournament. We'll see.
That's right. Exactly.
So, Nick, how about you give us a couple of your upset picks that you have in tour? I mean, I'd have to imagine you're going double digits, anyways. Which would probably declare as a Cinderella team that you have most confidence to make a big run. For those that don't know, Villanova was an 8 or a 9 seed. That's the highest seed to have ever won a championship.
I believe it's an 8 seed.
8.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nothing above that. Definitely not anything double digits, but who's someone who
Maybe.
could potentially give us that run, maybe?
So before I answer that, though, keep in mind that a 5 seed has never won the NCAA title either.
That's amazing.
So a
There's some-
5 seed has never won it. So you've
Right.
obviously had 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s,
Right.
no 5s. I don't know the 6s that won it. Obviously, I believe UConn was a 7 seed the one year they won it recently, and you have had a few 8 seeds win it, but you might have had a 9. I don't think there's never been a double digit though, or a 5
No.
seed.
No.
Anyways,
that's
so
awesome.
I constitute an upset as anything that's double digit or lower seed or higher seed, however you want to phrase it.
Right.
I don't consider the 8 and 9 to be an upset.
No.
It's too easy.
No.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the ones that I think are very, very likely. And then I'm going to give you a few that you should keep your eye on. I'm not necessarily taking them, but I'm not taking the team that I think winning to go very far, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first one I got is I got Virginia Tech over Florida.
Me too.
Virginia Tech is a 10 seed. Florida's a 7 seed. The SEC and ACC were a little bit down this year, but I do like Virginia Tech overall. They have a little bit more senior leadership experience in Florida. So I like Virginia Tech to get by a little bit more.
They're athletic too.
Winthrop, 12 seed. I like them a lot. Okay. They are 23-1 on the year. They are going up against Villanova, who has Jay Wright, who is a better coach than the Winthrop coach. However, Villanova has lost their 2 starting guards, including Colin Gillespie. I hope I pronounced that right.
Gillespie.
Gillespie. So, I mean, I saw on ESPN it's only like a 30% chance according to BPI, or
really,
like of people are taking Winthrop. I think Winthrop should actually be the favorite, in my own personal opinion, because Villanova struggled without Gillespie, and I don't see how they're going to win. I mean, if they're
young. They're young.
They are. I wouldn't be surprised if Nova won, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Winthrop is probably one of the 2 or 3 12 seeds that can do it. I think there's only one 12 seed that won't do it. Moving on. I wrote this down before I said it, but I am taking Missouri over OU now, a 9 over an 8, because OU lost their number 2 scorer. If Michigan State wins tomorrow night against UCLA, I am taking them over BYU. I like BYU as a team. They played Gonzaga tough in the WCC Conference Championship. I do think BYU has a solid team. However, I'm taking coaching over that, and they also have a good guard in Watts. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State got to the Elite Eight. I got to be honest with you. I would not be surprised if they got to the Elite Eight.
Okay? Have a good bracket.
If Michigan State wins, okay, they beat UCLA. They beat the 6th seed in BYU. They probably get Texas in the round of 32, which would be probably their tougher matchup. Okay. And then the Sweet 16, they probably get number 2 Alabama. Okay. But Alabama's more of a football school, we feel. So, I mean, Alabama has a great team. Don't get me wrong. They're a top 10 team in the country. But if you're looking at it, who are you putting your money on? Tom Izzo or Nate Oates?
Yeah, probably Tom Izzo.
Yeah. So I would take Michigan State. These next 2, they might make Joseph fly out of his chair. I'm taking Georgetown over Colorado.
Me too. I agree.
And
I agree.
My reasoning for it is I know Patrick Ewing may not be as experienced as a Colorado coach, but I don't think the Pac-12 is overly that great. I think USC might be a decent team. Oregon usually has a decent pedigree in the tournament with Nate Altman, who's one of the best coaches in the country. Also, he's a top 10 coach in the country. However, my feeling is if Georgetown can win one game, they might be able to rattle off and get into the Sweet 16.
They're hot. They're hot.
They just did it with the Big East. Now they could very easily lose. I'll probably fill out 2 brackets in my own bracket pool, and I'll take Georgetown in one, and I'll take Colorado in the other. To be honest with you, but I feel Georgetown has the capability of doing it. I think Patrick Ewing is doing a decent job there, despite losing a ton of recruits and a ton of people midseason. I mentioned he lost Matt McClung to Texas Tech, so he might be able to do it. And this last one, I'm taking the University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB. Okay. And I'm going to give you 2 reasons. Okay. Without going into too much detail. Number 1, Creighton hoists a lot of 3-pointers. Okay. They chuck up a lot of threes. And their first round game is in Lucas Oil Stadium. And if you've ever played a basketball game, you know that playing in a place like an Assembly Hall or a Cameron Indoor Stadium or like a high school arena is a lot different than playing in an NFL stadium where it's much more big open space.
Yep.
You feel like you might fall off the court at any given moment. I feel UCSB has an advantage in that. And also, I get a feeling that the Creighton players may be kind of giving up. These Creighton players might be giving up on Coach McDermott over recent issues that came about from some post-game comments. Obviously, he served a suspension briefly and has sincerely apologized multiple times. He even offered his own resignation over it. But he's still there. But I get the sense that there might be some players that are, they don't want to quit on the team, but they're also like not fully there. So I like University of California, Santa Barbara to at least win one game. Now, real quick, I'm going to give you the teams to keep an eye on to make a run. Ohio, they are a 13 seed. They're going up against 4 seed Virginia in the first round. I don't know why everyone's taking them, but everyone's taking them for a reason. And someone said they have the LaMelo Ball of this year's draft. So I don't know too much about that kid. I'm taking Virginia because they're still defending champs. And I have a feeling they'll put the clamps on this kid. But a lot of people are taking Ohio. USC is a 6 seed, but a lot of people think they could get to the Sweet 16 or possibly even the Elite 8. So keep an eye on them. VCU, same way, 10 seed. If they win the first game, I think they're playing Oregon in the first round, who's a 7. People feel that they have a decent enough team they can knock off Iowa then and get to the Sweet 16. UConn always does this. They won the title as a 7 seed. They're a 7 seed this year. They're playing a 10 seed in the first round. Don't be surprised if they knock off Alabama. Syracuse has Jim Boeheim. They're an 11 seed. They did it once before and they got to the Final Four as an 11 seed. So don't be surprised if they do it again. San Diego State University. They should have been a 1 seed last year if they would have had the tournament. They were, I think, 33-1 or 32-2 entering the tournament. They did graduate like 2 or 3 guys, but they still got like 3 guys back from that team. So that's one to keep an eye on as well. And then you always got to pick one crazy, upset to kind of happen in every tournament. Obviously, the 14s and 15s, clearly the 16s, don't win very often. But if you wanted to take, one of those seeds just to win, I'm taking 15 seed Iona. I'm not personally, but I would say go Iona over Alabama. And reason being, regardless of my opinion of the man, they got Rick Pitino, who after, a 2.5 month COVID pause, 2.5 months, he rallied them to win the conference tournament to get an automatic bid. So if you're looking for a team just to, go out on a whim on and say, what the heck, I'm going to take them in the first round. I don't really know much. Go with Iona. They got a coach that's been here before. So those are like my upsets and my teams to keep an eye on. I hope that gives everyone some picks. I see Joseph writing down. He's probably writing down Iona right now. But those are who I would take as like some upset picks and teams to keep an eye on that are not a top 5 seed, in my opinion.
Very good.
Well, there were some very interesting picks, and I did agree with some. And yes, it's going to be March Madness, and I just hope to see some really good games. So we have our last topic here, and it's an interesting one. There have been 35 title games since the field expanded to 64 teams in 1985. 47% of the time, there's at least one number one seed in the final. In 21 of 35 seasons, a number one seed has won the championship. Nick, are you taking a one seed or the field?
So mathematically, I should take the field because it means I have 64. Well, yeah, maybe
Technically,
a
yeah.
little bit
Yeah,
less when you
a lot
count
of
the 16
chances.
seeds and some playing teams, like maybe 55 versus 4. However, I am taking a one seed slightly by like that much. Here's the reason being. Well, first of all, I don't think Michigan's winning. Isaiah Livers broke his foot. I think they're all but done. He was like their main cat, so to speak, with everything. I don't see them going to the championship. They could, but I don't see it. I'd still take a one seed, and the reason being is that I feel the three teams that now that were the top 3 ones, Gonzaga, Baylor, and Illinois, are not heads in a way above the rest of the field, but they're above the rest of the field. Like I feel they're here, the rest of the field is kind of here and trying to play catch up. You know, obviously there's a lot of other good teams in basketball. Okay, Ohio State's very good, Houston's good, Alabama's good, Oklahoma State as Cade Cunningham is very good. Texas Tech will battle you to the end and is very good. You have teams that may not have the best team, but they got a good coach. Tony Bennett with Virginia, Jay Wright with Villanova, Izzo Michigan State, Boeheim with Syracuse. So there are other teams and there's other factors make you want to take it. But I think the other ones are just slightly ahead of the field. I like Illinois' 2 players with Kofi Coburn. I think he's very, very good. Baylor was on a roll until they hit their COVID pause, so they're a little bit different. But they have a tough road too, but I think they might be able to get by. That pains me saying it because they might get my Tar Heels around. Too. They might get them in round 2 if North Carolina can get their what together. But I would take a one seed slightly by a hair. I mean, yeah, it does happen often. And, if you pick 3 one seeds, by the way, to get to your Final Four, more power to you because I'm probably not going to be doing that on mine. I definitely have 2. I definitely have Illinois, and I definitely have Gonzaga. But I would definitely take the one seed in my own personal opinion, just because I feel they're slightly better. And the only other reason why I'm going to say that Gonzaga is definitely going to get, or should definitely get to the Final Four, they already beat the 2, the 3, and the 4 seed in their own region. Okay. The 2 seed is Iowa. Okay. They beat Iowa by I think it was like 11, 12, 13, 14 points. They put like 100 on them. Or it was like 99 to 87. Okay. So they beat them by 12. Kansas, they put 102 on them. That's a lot in college, kids. Okay, that is a lot. Okay, normally we see 60s and 70s. They put 102 in a 40-minute game, and they don't hoist as many threes as James Harden does in Brooklyn. Okay, and then when they played number 4 Virginia, who's number 4 in their region, I should say, not overall in the tournament or in the country, they put 99 on a Tony Bennett defensive-minded Virginia team. No one puts 99 on Virginia, okay? You don't do that. Or it might have been 89, okay? But still, you don't put up that many points on a Virginia team. I've been begging my Tar Heels to do it, and they put up 40. So, I mean, in closing, I am going to take a one seed by a hair. I truly do think that the final is probably going to be Gonzaga, Illinois in the final. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if another team came out of another region and was able to make a surprise splash. It does happen quite often, or get to the Elite Eight, or, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan or Baylor possibly went down in the first weekend. I wouldn't be surprised by that, or possibly in the first or in the Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. I wouldn't be surprised by it. I'm not picking it, but I wouldn't be surprised is what I'm saying. I think Gonzaga is the most sure thing to get to the Final Four. And I would say Illinois is probably the second surest thing, but I'd still take the one seed based on my own understanding of the season. which means I'm probably going to be wrong, but that's the beauty of the madness.
That's right.
Yes.
All the
Well,
time.
very good, Nick. We very much thank you for all your input. Hopefully, some people learn something in this episode, and maybe you go out and change your brackets before before you put them directly in. But Nick, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much for your insight. It was very nice talking to you.
Thank you for having me. Cuz it was great to see you.
Good to see you too.
I'm definitely gonna, if you guys haven't already, joined their bracket challenge. They got a couple of good giveaways that they're doing. So, make sure you get in on that. I know I've been kind of procrastinating it. I got an email to send after this to confirm my entry. There's a lot of other good ones you guys can go join. If you're in the Phillipsburg area and are watching this, the Phillipsburg Lowell Liners are doing a March Madness fundraiser as well. You may have contributed to. You buy 2 tickets, you get 1 free. So, definitely contribute to that one. And there's points for lowest score. I mean, 2 of my teams in the lowest score are not even in the tournament, Kentucky and Auburn. So I definitely think I'm going to win the money on lowest scoring there. But, if you see other brackets, you can reach out to me if you want to join my own personal one too. Mine's super cheap to get into if you want to play. I'm sure Joseph's, if he has openings and wants to lose more money to more people, would be more than happy to lose you in as well. But thank you again for having me on, guys. Maybe we can do one again before the end of the tournament or after the tournament, like recapping some of the games that went on, because Friday the first game starts at 12:15. Last one tips off at like probably 10:15 at night.
Yep.
I'll probably be up till 1 a.m. watching all of them.
It's crazy.
Day. So, but thank you again for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're happy you came on. Definitely.
And Joe, final thoughts.
I'm not gonna upset Derek because I'm not gonna give what I did in my final 4 for not the timeout bracket. It's not the timeout bracket, but I'm still not gonna give my ideas. But I will say Big 10 and Big 12 is where I leaned over most of my picks. ACC too a little bit, but no, this was a really fun show, and I think we could tell our listeners that I'm sure we'll have Nick back. If it's not for college basketball, he's a big Mets fan, so. And so is Derek's dad. By the way, happy birthday, Charlie.
Happy birthday.
Yes. And so, just good times. And we'll do, of course, a couple more shows. And it's always a good time with doing our podcast. So I always enjoy it.
So we hope everyone, and as always mentioned, we hope you get involved in the March Madness tournament. There's still availability, of course. There's not a cutoff, so Friday at noon is when everything has to be in. And don't forget, we have you win a $50 gift certificate and a free timeout t-shirt. It's courtesy of Timeout. Feel free to check out the rest of our videos. We're up on YouTube, podcast platforms. Join our new Facebook page, Facebook group. We transitioned from a page to a group to let people be able to see stuff a lot easier. So, but as always, thank you very much, everyone, for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. Everyone stay safe. Take care.